For centuries, the story of Jesus has been told, retold, and carved into the hearts of billions. Every verse, every word he spoke seemed accounted for. The Bible, complete. The story, sealed. But what if buried beneath centuries of mud and silence, there were still words left unspoken? It happened on a forgotten shore, where the Jordan River meets the Sea of Galilee. A team of archaeologists was digging in the heat of summer, expecting nothing more than broken pottery and sand. But what they unearthed that day would send ripples through history, a message hidden for nearly 1,500 years. As the mud fell away, a mosaic shimmered beneath the light, its colors still bright after centuries of darkness. Then, letter by letter, an ancient Greek inscription emerged. Peter, chief of the apostles and holder of the keys of heaven. The team froze. The words were familiar, echoing Matthew 16:19, where Christ gives Peter the keys to heaven itself. But when they scanned the mosaic under infrared light, they saw something no one was prepared for. A second ring of letters appeared, faint, almost invisible to the naked eye. It read, "He said to him, 'Guard my house, for I go to prepare the heavens.'" The air went still, cameras stopped. For a moment, it felt as though time had folded, and the voice of Christ was speaking again through stone. If these words are genuine, they could be the earliest archaeological echo of a lost saying of Jesus, one never written in any gospel, but remembered by those who once walked the same shores. The site itself deepens the mystery. It lies near El Araj, believed to be the long-lost biblical town of Bethsaida, home of Peter, Andrew, and Philip, the first men Jesus called to follow him. This was the birthplace of faith, the shoreline of miracles, and now, the ground where something extraordinary has been found. Why would early Christians carve such words into stone and then seal them away beneath centuries of earth? Were they preserving a sacred memory, protecting a saying too mysterious to be understood? Or were they simply passing down, in the only way they knew, a fragment of a conversation between the Son of God and the man he called the Rock? This is not just another archaeological discovery. It's a confrontation with the very roots of belief, a moment when history, faith, and science meet at the same trembling point. Because if this mosaic truly contains the echo of Jesus' words, it may not rewrite Scripture, but it could reshape how we understand Peter's calling, his mission, and the meaning of the keys to heaven. So tonight, we return to that shore, to the mud, the mosaics, and the hidden message that could change how the world remembers the first apostle. The question isn't just what they found, it's what it means. What if Peter's role was never about authority, but about guardianship? What if the keys were not symbols of power, but of trust? And what if this forgotten message, sealed beneath the Galilean earth, was meant to resurface right now to remind us of what faith was always meant to be? When the first shovels hit the earth, no one expected anything more than the remnants of a fishing village. The site, known locally as El Araj, sat silent beneath centuries of mud. Floods from the Jordan River had buried it so deep that earlier teams gave up entirely, calling the land unworkable. But the 2016 excavation changed everything. Archaeologists from Israel and the United States returned with a new conviction, that this might be the lost biblical Bethsaida, the very town where Jesus performed his earliest miracles and called his first disciples, Peter, Andrew, and Philip, under the blistering summer sun. The team dug carefully through layers of clay and silt. The air smelled of wet soil and salt. Every scrape of metal against earth carried hope and fatigue. For days, they found only broken pottery, shells, and fishing weights until one morning. A trowel struck something smooth. The sound was different, sharper than stone. They brushed away the mud, and beneath it, a mosaic shimmered into view. The tiles, red, blue, white, and gold, were arranged in perfect geometry. At the center, faint Greek letters began to emerge. When translated, the words stunned the team. Peter, chief of the apostles and holder of the keys of heaven. The discovery felt intentional, deliberate. This wasn't a random decoration. It was a proclamation set into the heart of a Byzantine basilica, one large enough to hold hundreds of worshippers, and what lay beneath those tiles was even older. Beneath the church's foundation, they found first-century fishing tools, pottery, and household objects, remnants of a working village. That meant this ground had been inhabited during the very time of Jesus. The conclusion was clear. The Byzantine builders didn't choose this site by accident. They built the church exactly here because generations before them had already believed it was holy ground. To understand why this discovery matters, we have to step back in time. The Gospels mention Bethsaida repeatedly, the place where Jesus healed the blind man, fed the multitude, and called fishermen to become fishers of men. But after the first century, the town vanished. Floods shifted the shoreline, sediment covered the ruins. Over time, even the memory of where it stood disappeared. For nearly 2 millennia, pilgrims searched for it, monks, scholars, and explorers, guided only by fragments of early Christian writings. Some pointed inland to Et Tel, others toward the lakeside plain of El Araj. In the 8th century, a Bavarian bishop named Willibald wrote about visiting a church of the apostles by the Sea of Galilee, a church built over the home of Peter and Andrew. For centuries, this was dismissed as a legend, until now, because what the archaeologists uncovered at El Araj matched Willibald's description almost perfectly. A large basilica, guest rooms for pilgrims, a courtyard, a bathhouse, and most importantly, a mosaic inscription honoring Peter. And as restoration began, conservators noticed something unusual. The mosaic's surface was almost untouched, its colors vivid, its grout pristine. It was as though someone had deliberately sealed the church to protect it. Then came the moment that changed everything. Using infrared imaging, the team scanned the floor for faint markings invisible to the human eye. And there, encircling the main inscription, another ring of text appeared, ghostly and fragmented. Epigraphers spent days reconstructing the missing pieces. Letter by letter, when the phrase was finally read aloud, silence fell over the site. He said to him, "Guard my house, for I go to prepare the heavens." No one had ever seen this line before. It wasn't part of any biblical manuscript or apocryphal gospel. It was something new, yet deeply familiar. The structure of the sentence echoed ancient Aramaic speech patterns, suggesting it might have originated as an early oral saying, later translated into Greek. If true, that would make it the first known archaeological record of an unwritten teaching of Jesus. Why, then, would such words have been hidden? Perhaps the builders of the basilica weren't trying to conceal them, but to preserve them. Early Christians often built churches over sacred sites, turning memory into architecture. They saw themselves not as inventors of faith, but as its guardians, preserving moments they believed truly happened in those places. The Church of the Nativity in Bethlehem marks the site of Christ's birth. The Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem marks his crucifixion. The Church of the Annunciation in Nazareth honors Mary's encounter with the angel. Each one was built not for beauty, but for remembrance. In the same way, the Basilica at El Araj may have been built over the very ground where Jesus first spoke to Peter, where he gave him his mission. The keys, the calling, the charge to guard his house. And perhaps those early believers, aware of how fragile memory can be, sealed that mosaic not as a secret, but as a message to the future. That faith is a trust, not a throne. When word of the discovery reached scholars around the world, debates erupted. Was this truly an echo of Christ's voice, or simply a poetic dedication to Peter? Could those words have come from an ancient sermon, or even an early local tradition passed down orally? No one can say for certain. The archaeologists were careful. They never claimed to have found a new gospel. They called it an expanded local tradition, a phrase that leaves room for wonder without rewriting scripture. But one fact remains undeniable. This mosaic, buried beneath Galilee's soil, is the earliest known artifact to connect Peter's title directly with a spoken command from Christ. It bridges history and faith in a way few discoveries ever have. It reminds us that Christianity was not born in cathedrals or councils, but in fishing villages. conversations, and the fragile memories of ordinary people who believed they had met God. When the last archaeologist brushed the dust from the mosaic and the cameras turned off, something extraordinary lingered in the silence. Not just an ancient inscription, but a whisper across 2,000 years. For centuries, the keys of heaven have divided theology, shaped papal authority, and inspired countless sermons. Yet here, on the quiet shore of Galilee, that symbol feels suddenly different. It's no longer about power or hierarchy, it's about guardianship. If this inscription truly preserves the words, "Guard my house, for I go to prepare the heavens," then Peter's mission was never to rule, but to protect, to watch over faith while Christ completed his work above. It reframes everything. The church isn't a fortress of control, it's a home of trust. And Peter, the man who once doubted, denied, and wept, was chosen not for perfection, but for loyalty. The mosaic beneath Galilee's soil doesn't rewrite the gospel, it illuminates it. It reminds us that God's truth isn't trapped in books or cathedrals. Sometimes, it sleeps beneath the mud, waiting for the right moment to speak again. So, what do you think? Were these truly lost words of Christ, or a message left by early believers to keep the faith alive? And what do you believe the keys of heaven really open? A gate or a heart? Share your thoughts below, because this story, like faith itself, is still being uncovered.